This is going to be the basic walkthrough of the HMI screen on our Pro Series pump fillers. When you power the machine up, this will be the screen that you see. You got a couple of things to help you here. Your total production number. This count will go up as you run the machine. The in-feed container count. This is going to come up during a cycle as your in-feed count sensor sees containers pass by it. It'll reset with every cycle. Your discharge star count, this one will count up as the star wheel is rotating if you're using star wheel style indexing. And this status bar here where it says fill cycle complete is actually just the filler status. So this, when you click it into cycle, will tell you that you're in cycle. This is going to flash in cycle. So you're going to have a series of toggles here. Your gray switches at the bottom here are going to be essentially your master switches. So these will override any setting that's going on anywhere else. First one's going to be just the off and on for starting your fill cycle. Once you have all the set points ran, if you turn this on and then turn it back off, you would run one cycle's worth of containers. It'll pull them in, it'll fill them, and then it'll never kick them out. So that's good for when you're doing initial setups. If you just turn it on and leave it on, the container will just continue to run in automatic mode. Your fill heads toggle here will do just that. It'll turn your fill pumps and your fill heads off or on. Your product supply valve here will allow the product supply system to fill your tank. The conveyor button here will do just that. It'll allow your conveyor to actually operate. And auxiliary is not often used. Every once in a while we use this for customer add-ons. If we start at the top here, would be your manual toggle screen. This is where you're going to go to do most of your beginning setups or diagnostics. So if you toggle this screen on here, you got a series of operations that you can operate manually. Your conveyor button here is going to be the only button that when you leave this screen will stay toggled into whatever state it's in. Conveyor run continuous, that means your conveyor will just run all the time no matter what the filler is doing, whether it's in cycle or at rest. The conveyor just runs constantly. It'll still stop during an e-stop situation though. So automatic, it will run the conveyor during a cycle, it'll pause during the fill and then turn back on. Your entry gate auto and open and exit gate auto and open is just that. It'll toggle those gates if you're running pin indexing. Star wheel, if you're running a star wheel index system, this will open up your star wheel and allow you to freewheel it. The drip tray will operate your drip tray. If you have one, head dive is going to dive down your heads to the lowest position and then bring them back up when you toggle it back off. The locate will be for your neck locators if you have them. Next over here, now you got all of your fill heads. This will cycle on your fill head and its matched pump. You can do them one at a time, or you can do all of them at once. Next over, you got the rest of them up to 12, and again, another all heads. If you return back to your main, next button down is going to be your filler setup. If you click on that, this is where you're going to select any options that you want to use during your fill cycle or with your filler in general. So if I wanted to just runs heads 1 and 2, I can turn those on there, leave the rest of them off, and only those two would operate. If I next over, I got the option for my other two fill heads. Next over again, now I can select if I want to run my neck locator if I have one, my drip tray. If you toggle these off, they'll just be in the retracted state, so they're out of your way. Head dive, you can select which options you want to run. You can either have it off so that heads will not dive at all. You can have standard where it's going to dive down to the lowest set point, fill, and then raise back up, or bottom up where it's going to dive all the way down to the lowest set point. It'll wait a predetermined amount of time, and then it'll raise back up while still filling. Fill hold. If you have fill hold turned on here, this one is going to wait until your tank float is satisfied before it starts the fill cycle. If you have supply hold, it's going to wait until the fill cycle's over until this product supply turns on to replenish your tank. Index type, this is where you select which type you have. So it'd be pin, star, none, and entry gate and exit gates. You can toggle inverted, normal. Generally, these are in an inverted state. So that way, when you hit the e-stop, the entry and exit pins pull back into the cylinder housings, so they're not stabbing anything. The next button you got here is for pump ramp. This is an option that you can turn on, and then you can control whether you start with a slow fill and end with a slow fill, and then run full speed in the center, or if you just want to run slow in the beginning or run slow at the end. Once you turn this on, there's some other set points that we'll get to in the timer screen that allow you to control that. Next, now you can change whether or not you're light on or dark on for any of your sensors, just in case you run a different sensor down the road. Some of them are not interchangeable, so we will give you an option to swap that out here. The backup float is the same thing, so this is just for the upper float in your tank. So if you have this in the wrong state, you're going to have an alert at a resting state on your main screen under your alarms. Container available, you can turn that option off or on here. Dive limits, you can turn those off or on here. Generally, we do not run dive limits on our machines. If you next over again, now you have the option to run any of your fill heads in pulse mode, which is what our general machines are running, where you have a sensor that's reading a reluctor wheel mounted to your pump, or you can run in time mode. So this is nice if you have a bad sensor or a failure of some point. You can run in time mode instead of pulse mode. It's a little less accurate though. If you return back to main here, next screen down is going to be our presets. If you come into this main screen, we'll start here where you can select your pump speeds. If you run here, you can set each individual pump speed however you want it. So if I say I want to hit 50%, that would run 50% of my pump speed. And then you can do that through down the line. And then on the next screen, I'm going to be able to set my low speed percentage. So this is going to come into play if you're running the ramp. So this would be the percentage of the ramp speed that we put in here. So this would be here. This would be 10% of that 50% that I have set here. And you can toggle all of those independently. If I return back to main, go back to my preset screen, run down container available on delay if you are running that feature. For this on delay, the line backup on delay, the no bottle, no fill delay timer, all of those are going to be the same situation where this time is going to be how long a container has to sit in front of the sensor before the PLC recognizes it. This helps get rid of flashing or anything like that where you sometimes get a weird reading on say a glass bottle. This will help get rid of that. You generally rerun these at about a half of a second. Exit gate duration. This is going to be set during your automatic setup, but you can fine tune it here. This would be the amount of time that the gate needs to stay open in order for the containers to be able to pass by, leaving the fill zone. And then it also uses this to know how long to keep the entry pin open for the new containers to come into the fill zone. Your entry gate delay open timer, this will be what creates the gap between the old containers leaving the fill zone and the new containers coming in. So generally we'll set that at about 2 seconds. In-feed Sensor, no bottle, no fill delay, we already talked about. In-feed container count preset. So this is where you'll set how many containers you want your in-feed count sensor to count coming in. This will generally match your number of fill heads. Next over, if you're running a star wheel, this is where you would set the counter for that. This will be determined based on the design of your star wheel and how many pins there are per pocket. So you'll set this according to that. Delay head dive timer. This would be once the containers are indexed into place, how long does the machine wait before it activates the fill heads to dive down? This is usually used to allow bottles to stabilize or to allow time for a drip tray to move out of the way or a locator to get into place. You can run a little bit of time here. Head release up delay timer. This will be used only when you're running bottom up fill. So this would be the amount of time once your nozzle reaches the full down position, how long it waits before it starts to lift back up. Fill delay timer will be the amount of time after the fill heads are initiated to dive, how long does it wait before it sends the signal for them to actually open and start filling. So especially on a dive situation, sometimes if you're diving slow into a container, you'll want to put a little bit of time here to allow the fill head to be completely into place before your fill head opens. Or in a bottom up fill situation, you'll want to make sure that you're waiting until the nozzle is all the way at the bottom of the container before the nozzle opens up. So that's where you would adjust that. The next screen, you're going to have new cycle restart delay. So this is going to time when your drip tray comes back out underneath your fill heads. So you can, and it'll also help you time the machine a little bit for slower equipment down the line. So delay, exit, retract, and new cycle. This would be often used if you are running really long nozzles in a bottom up fill situation where you're pulling them out of the container and you have a lot of neck space after the fill level stops. So you'll put a little bit of time in here to eliminate the exit gate opening before the nozzle is completely out of the container. Sometimes that'll happen and it'll cause your necks of your containers to tilt back as they're trying to leave. So you can delay that a little bit here. The buffer tank float delay timer. This is going to be the amount of time that your float has to be in the down position calling for product before the PLC actually turns on the product supply system. This will help eliminate sloshing in the tank from the product supply turning off and on too quickly. So usually about a second delay here is what we would run. So the pump ramp delay time and the pump ramp duration time is going to be used if your ramp is turned on and you're running in a time-based mode, not pulse-based. So if you're in a time-based mode, you would adjust your ramp here. Pump ramp delay time is going to be where that ramp happens in the fill. So if you had 0 in here like it's showing now, you would get a slow ending to your fill and a fast start. Any number that you put in here above 0 shifts the ramp towards the end of the cycle. So you could position it in the middle of the fill so you have a slow start and a slow finish, or you can have a full speed start and just a slow finish, just depending on what you put here. Pump ramp duration time is just how long it runs in the fast speed. So if you wanted it to run at fast speed for 2 seconds, you would just put 2 seconds in here. And then you could position that 2 seconds within your fill cycle by adding or removing time here. If I next over, I see where my pump ramp pulse settings are at. So if I'm running in the standard pulse-based mode, this is where I would adjust my ramp. So the pump ramp up pulse percentage, that is going to be a higher number in this set point, is going to be a longer slow speed at the beginning of the fill. The ramp down pulse percentage is going to be a lower number from 100 to increase time of the slow speed at the end of the fill. So the lower this number, you would always start at 100 and then lower this number. And the lower this number is, you're going to have a longer slow speed run at the end of the fill. If I return to my main, I'm going to kind of skip ahead here and I'm going to go to this automatic setup screen. This is where I'm going to run my automatic setup for my fill heads. So if I were to have head 1 ASU, I'd put a container underneath, and I have a separate video showing how this is done, but I would come here, hit reset, push and hold head 1 ASU. As I push this, my pump will turn on, my fill head will open, and I'll have a number indicating here, counting up. Once I get my course setting done, I would just hit save one only. That gives me my approximate fill volume for pump head 1, and I can do that all the way through every head, or I can do all of them at the same time. Again, for pin index ASU, I would come over here. I have another video for this as well, but I would click on this guy and I would put containers. I'd have all my mechanical settings correct, my entry pin, exit pin where I want it, my conveyor speed set where I want it. And I would move my containers up against my entry pin and have my in-feed count sensor set so it's reading on one of the containers. And I would clear this out so this is zeros and hit start ASU index, and that's going to open the entry pin, turn my conveyor on, move my containers towards my exit pin. It's going to count them, and then it's going to give me amount of time when it reads the set number of containers for my in-feed count. That'll populate over here into my exit gate duration. The entry gate is standard 2 seconds. You can tailor that wherever you want it, and this will automatically populate back into your preset screen as well. From here, I should note that you can use your drip tray and your locate and your head dive all here when you're doing an ASU, so you don't have to make a mess. If I return to main, after I've done my setup and I'm ready to make some adjustments, I can go to my adjust fill head screen, and this is where I can toggle individual set points for any of my fill heads to fine tune. Your ASU is kind of your course adjustment. This is your fine tuning adjustment. You can make overall changes by clicking increase or decrease all, and you can come across and see all the individual fill heads here. You can also use the built-in calculator. If you weigh this out, you go ahead and weigh your fill cycle out, and you enter in your numbers here. You can use really anything. You can weigh it in grams. If you enter in your amount of grams into the actual, and then you put in the target of how many grams you're actually looking for, then it will spit out an adjustment for you. So then you'll go through for every one, and you would click on the calculator for that one. I would click on my actual, my target will stay set. And when I click it in there, I would hit save, and it's going to calculate a new number mathematically that I should be running. That'll get you a really good accurate number in there, or you can just do it manually by clicking the up and down arrows. If I return to main, my next screen over will be my recipe screen. This is where I can go to save up to 50 recipes. So I could click through and select any of the numbers that I want. I can hit save here, file for use later, or I can select the recipe that I want and I can load it for use now. If I return back to the main, here's my alarm screen. This will be flashing red if I have anything going on. I can click on it and it'll give me a description of any of the alarms that are available. And the CIP screen is going to be for clean in place setup. We have another video that goes through in detail of how this all operates. But essentially, you're going to click on how long you want to delay the open of your fill heads, how long you want to hold them open, and how many times you want it to cycle. So if you wanted to stay open for 6 seconds with a 2-second delay in between, and you wanted to run 50 cycles, that's what I would put in here. And then I would hit start, and it's going to turn on the CIP spray ball up top, and it's going to run and pulse my fill heads in that amount of time for that amount of cycles, and it'll give me a current setting here. You can cancel it at any point in time as well, or you can dive the heads down if you're running it into some containers or a trough and try and minimize the mess.